I hope we didn't get that at the start of the recording, Ed.
You can edit it out, can't you?
No editing with these videos. G'day, Ed. How are you, mate? Welcome to the show.
Living the dream. And no, I didn't mean that, guys. I love you all. Just trying to be funny. Yeah. How you doing, Rob?
I have to. I'm gonna have to figure out how to bleep that out. It goes something like this, doesn't it? Yeah, you got to kind of just go.
There you go. Yeah. What did he say?
What did he say? Nothing. Don't worry about it, folks. It's all good. So I killed the music at the start of the show. I killed the atmosphere. Let me bring it back in.
Okay.
There it is. How's your weekend, mate?
It was pretty productive, actually. I didn't take the time out that I should have taken. There's too much stuff going on in the world that I wanted to cover. So, yeah, so it was a lot of work, a lot of research.
Did you manage to get some downtime, or were you working?
No, I was working the entire time. Yeah, but it's like Grandma Walton said. It's a good kind of tired. It's a good kind of busy. I enjoy this. So, and there's a lot of material to cover. I mean, if I'm going to talk to people about topics, I want to give them some value added. So you got to put in a little time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so for me, I worked all day Saturday and I worked all day Sunday as well, and right back at it tomorrow. So just working with clients. Had to onboard a new client on yesterday. I onboarded the new client, but I had a conversation with her for must have been about 2 hours on Saturday. Then I chatted with another client for an hour and another client for an hour. Before you know it, my whole day was gone. That's it. I get up a little bit early and sort of potter around a little bit, go for a workout, come back, eat breakfast, and then dive straight into it. The phone rings. And all of a sudden, your whole day's gone. And I spent most of yesterday editing and having a little bit of fun. I got a little bit of downtime, which was really good. But hey, people are not here to hear about our weekend. So why don't we get into today's show and share with people what's going on? Welcome to the Unspoken Truth, folks. If you've not been here before, it's great to have you here. We're excited to be sharing the news that other people are not talking about, the things that are not reported on. We love to share our opinions here on the show as well. Today, we're going to be talking about ANZAC Day. Here in Australia, that's one of the biggest holidays and one of the biggest days that we have on our calendar. It's going to talk about what happens if China do decide to invade Taiwan. I'm going to share a little bit about Ukrainian corruption and shine a spotlight on that. It's pretty hard to believe, and I'll sum that up in a really short 5-minute video for you, and then we're going to have a conversation about that. And we'll end on a really bright note and talk about which bank's going to fail next. So looking forward to that. Ladies and gentlemen, if this is your first time here, make sure you hit that subscribe button, ring that bell so you never miss an episode. And don't forget, you can also download this show as a podcast. We put this show out every day, and it goes out every day as a podcast. So if you can't catch us on YouTube during your commute for whatever reason, you can always download via Spotify or Apple or wherever you find your podcast. And all of the links to everything that we talk about today will be found in the show notes, whether you're listening to this as a podcast or you're watching this on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter, also over on Rumble, and also on our Telegram channel as well. And we have those alternative places over there because we can't really talk about certain things here on YouTube. So we use Rumble or Telegram to talk about those things. And we use our Twitter account to get the word out as well. So we'd love some love over there. If you like what Ed and I are doing, make sure you follow us over there. What do you say, Ed?
Yeah. Now I've got to sign up for those services. So
we're going to drag you kicking and screaming into the 21st century. What do you say?
That's right.
That's a good one. All right. I'm going to take it away here on this first part of the show. So let me get rid of these overlays. Let me boot Ed out of the stream because I've got to get onto my high horse over here, ladies and gentlemen, and share something with you. I just want to talk about ANZAC Day. So for the people that don't know me or that are just having discovery of this channel or this podcast, I'm a veteran. I was in the Royal Australian Navy for about 4.5 years in total, and same in the Army, about 4.5 years. But by the time you get in and all of those things and the time that it takes to get there, I kind of add another couple of months on the front end of that as well because you're training nonstop to join. When you get there, it's about 10 years in total of my life spent with the Australian Defence Force. I was lucky enough to be on a couple of different warships. I was on HMAS Brisbane, HMAS Melbourne, and I went pretty much everywhere the Australian Navy goes in about 4.5 to 5 years, but I never went to Hawaii. I never went to a RIMPAC. That was the only other place at the time when I was in the Navy in the early 1990s that I never went to. So it was a good opportunity. I went to the Persian Gulf. I went all around Australia. I went up top in Southeast Asia and all of those great places, and some Southwest Pacific as well. So it was a great job for a young person. And shortly after that career came to an end, I kind of went as far as I could go, because you see the ranks that are ahead of you and you say, okay, so I've been here for a couple of years. What happens? I go ashore to a shore posting and I'm going to come back and do the job that I've just been doing for the last 3 years. So I kind of thought there's got to be something else. There's got to be more. And the Navy were a little bit tricky. They didn't let you move around in the job so much. So to spend so much money training you, you stay in that job. They won't let you go and do something else. So I put my hand up and said I wanted to go and be in the Army. They wouldn't do an inter-service transfer for me, which is a real shame. So I had to actually get out. I was out for about 9 months, but I trained for about 6 months of that non-stop, and pretty much full-time I trained. And shortly after I got to my interviews, the 2 warrant officers there were like, what the hell are you doing here? Why didn't you do an inter-service transfer? And I told them, and they just signed the papers and sent me on my way to the next intake. So I had a really great experience in the Australian Army as well. I was very fortunate where I was. But today on ANZAC Day, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background for what I'm about to say, because it's pretty polarizing and it's pretty opinionated. But you know what? I got the microphone, I got the camera, I got the channel. I can say whatever the hell I want. So I'm going to do it. So if you don't know, ANZAC Day here in Australia is a time to remember the service and the sacrifice of Australians. And we especially remember the people that pay the ultimate sacrifice in service of this nation. The people that never came home. And that's the idea of the ceremonies that we have that are going on right now as I'm talking to you. Their memories are kept alive by this tradition, the ode that we say, and the people that served with them. I was very fortunate. I never served in a place where people were killed in combat. I was very, very lucky. I do know a bunch of people that were killed in combat, but I was never there when that actually happened. So this day is especially poignant for me, remembering those people and remembering those folks that never came home. I used to buy into the tradition of ANZAC Day, of wearing a suit, getting my medals out and putting my medals on, and going to a ceremony at 5 o'clock in the morning and listening to what's going on there, and then going and having breakfast and drinking beers all day. But I don't buy into it anymore. I just don't. Unfortunately, I think it's all just I think it's actually a bit of BS, if I'm honest. And I'm not trying to diminish the memory of the people that never came home. Let me lay out my case here, and hopefully I can share a different perspective for you. After the last 3 years of seeing the government up close, I no longer believe in the sacrifice that was made by the troops. I don't believe that that sacrifice was made in the name of freedom. I believe it was made in vain. And that sacrifice that those troops made, especially in modern times, in the last 20 years I'm talking about, it was made in vain, because you send forward our best and brightest people to waste their lives, which is completely and totally unnecessary. And 100% of that responsibility lies with our politicians. 100% of it lies with our politicians, not with the Taliban, not with Al Qaeda, not with Saddam Hussein, but with the foolish politicians that govern us. When I look back and I look at the last 20 years, and I'm a student of history, particularly military history, because I spent the first part of my working career in the military, just completely exposed to all of that. And some would say maybe brainwashed, and I tend to agree with that. You definitely are brainwashed by the military. And if you look at just how unbelievably stupid the war in Iraq was, it was based on a lie, where Colin Powell was sitting there with some fictitious thing in the UN saying that this amount would kill everybody in the room. But it was a lie. He lied. The whole war was a lie. All we did in Iraq was kill literally millions of people, and we didn't get democracy for doing that. What we got instead was an even greater enemy, and one that wants to destroy the great Satan. And Australia falls under the umbrella of the great Satan, with nuclear weapons. They want to destroy us with nuclear weapons. They've said that out aloud many times. And that, of course, is Iran. That's all we got for all of that chaos that we caused in Iraq, is we've got a country that wants to destroy us with nuclear weapons. What about 20 years in Afghanistan? We all know that was also a lie. It was ran by absolute fools. And after $2 trillion, with a T, folks, $2,000 billion, and thousands of lives destroyed, lost, families back home destroyed. What do we get for it? We got a stronger and even stronger Taliban, and a more deadly Taliban, because they're now armed to the teeth with our equipment that was left behind. Unbelievable. And when I say our, I put Australia into that, firmly into that American camp as well, because we just follow blindly with the Americans. We do follow blindly. Folks, whatever you do, don't buy into the lie of Ukraine either. It's a ruse. The whole thing is a ruse. They're the most corrupt government on planet Earth. And I'm going to show you a video shortly that shows that and that explains that. In just 4 minutes, I'll show you how they're the most corrupt government on planet Earth. And every day on my Telegram channel, I see Ukrainian troops committing atrocities and going against the laws of armed conflict. In war, we're governed by laws. The laws of armed conflict say what you can and can't do. And the rules of engagement that you have as a soldier on the battlefield tell you what you can and can't do. And I can tell you from the videos that I see, and if I could show them on this platform to you this morning, I would show them. But I can tell you that they're committing atrocities on a daily basis. Yesterday, I think I pulled out about 9 videos. I've got a little folder on my desktop that I back up. And one day I'll be able to show it and show the Australian people and shine a spotlight on what we're actually supporting. Because what we're supporting is unbelievable. If you saw what was going on the battlefield, you would lose support for the war straight away, because you'd go, hey, they shouldn't be doing that, should they? And yeah, they shouldn't be doing that. Absolutely not. This is a propaganda war on the scale that you could never possibly imagine. It's just unbelievable, the lies that we're being told. Look, folks, war is a total and complete failure of humanity, not because human beings want to kill each other, but because politicians just can't figure out how to speak to each other. The people that we elect are liars and they're fools. And if those people didn't exist, war wouldn't exist either. And all of those people that didn't come home because of political decisions would be at home with us right now. Any person that listens to a liar or to a fool gives all of their self-respect away. And all of the self-respect you have goes away. But the politicians on every country on planet Earth in the last couple of years, they lied to us. They lied about masks. They lied to us about jabs. They lied to us about billions of dollars. Literally billions of dollars have gone away, and they simply couldn't remember where that money went when they were pressed on the issues. Here in Victoria, in Australia, we know we dragged the Premier Daniel Andrews in front of a commission and asked him a series of questions about a $50 million contract. And what did he say? Nah, I can't recall. Nobody is ever held to account. Right now, folks, these politicians are lying to you. They're lying to you about the war in Ukraine. They're lying to you about the environment. They're lying to you about food and energy prices. And they're lying to you about the so-called upcoming war with China. These politicians are liars. And if you listen to them, you're giving away all of your self-respect. Don't buy into it, folks. It's a lie. We allowed these people, these politicians, to lock us down for months on end, to use the police to arrest pregnant women in their own home, to pepper spray old women, and to bash peaceful protesters that were doing exactly what they were told to do. And not a single one of those police officers, not one of them, has ever been held to account, never mind a politician. It is unbelievable how they get away with this corruption and the destruction, the systematic destruction of our society. Let me ask you, folks, which politician, which one? There's a lot of them, and there's been a lot of them in the last 20 years, but which politician was ever held to account over the death of Australian troops in Iraq or Afghanistan? Which one? None. You'd be correct in saying none, because none of them were held to account. No one was held responsible for the death of Australian troops on the battlefield. But we went to war, followed the Americans based on a lie. So the whole thing was a lie. Australians died because of a lie, but no politicians were held to account. So why do we let these politicians get away with it? Why do we let them do that? Have we got no self-respect for ourselves? Look, whatever you do in your life, never, ever, never, ever do what a lying politician tells you to do. Never. Especially if it involves packing your gear and going off to some far distant land to go to war. Don't do it. Don't do it. They're lying to you. And you could never possibly know the driving forces that are behind it. But what we know from what they tell us is a lie, because they continuously get caught in a lie. So why would I make such a big statement like this on one of Australia's most sacred days, ANZAC Day? This is a day of remembrance. This is a day to remember our fallen soldiers, sailors, and airmen. It's a day to remember the people that didn't come home. Well, it's because I can make a statement about that. I can say that. And some would say that's because of the sacrifice of those people. But I believe it's because the people that govern us and that have always governed us don't care one little bit about you, about me, or about the people that died. They don't care. Sure, they're sad about it. Sure, they would say that it's a bad thing, but they genuinely don't care. All they care about is maintaining power. That's all they care about. The world that you and I live in, it seems like it's a good thing. It seems like they care about us. It seems like they provide for us, but it's an illusion. It's an absolute illusion. And we know that it's an illusion. All you have to do is just open your eyes and look up, because the last 3 years has proven to us that our leaders and the people that govern this country, particularly in Australia, are liars. They're liars and they're fools. I used to think that Australia was the lucky country, but it's not. It's a nation that's been completely divided by the left side of politics, and it's been further divided by these lying politicians that will do and they'll say anything to maintain absolute power. It's sad that people die in wars, and I'm not diminishing the memory of those people for 1 second. I'm not diminishing that at all. I'm recognizing that and I'm remembering that today on ANZAC Day, but I'm doing it in a way that feels right to me. And going to a ceremony, putting medals on that the government gave to me, I don't think I'll ever wear those medals ever again in my whole life, but putting those medals on and pretending like I did the right thing and I was doing something right is just based on a lie. Everything that I did in the military was based on lying politicians. Does that diminish my service? Well, maybe a little bit it does. I feel like it does. I'm still proud of my service. I'm proud of the people that I serve with. I'm proud of the job that I did. But really, should I have been doing that? Should I have followed what a lying politician said to me? No, I shouldn't have. And I look back at it later in my life now with a little bit of regret. And I look back at it and think, man, that was a waste. And man, that was stupid listening to those politicians and buying into what they were actually brainwashing with me. All I'm saying, folks, what I'm trying to say here is that on ANZAC Day, I want you to remember the people that never came home. And I want you to remember the people that suffered as a result of that. But I also want you to remember that the reason that they didn't come home is because of politicians who lied to us. And I'll wrap that up by saying, lest we forget. All right, Ed, I'll bring you back in here, man. I'm off my high horse. I climbed down off it and I'll put it out there. What do you think? Have you got some feedback for me? Let me introduce something like a little bit gentle here to give it some atmosphere, take the heat out of the conversation. What do you think, mate? Am I right? Am I wrong? Am I crazy? What? You just have to unmute yourself there, mate.
No, you are right. I mean, who am I to judge? I never served in the military. My son did. He was in the Navy. And I have family members who, including my dad, who served. So everything you said, you made your case very well, and I totally get it. And when you don't have to look very far. Look at the withdrawal in Afghanistan, that disastrous withdrawal, and it's terribly done. 13 people died, on that day, and it was all done because of a rush. It was a political decision to pull out. They wanted to get out by September 10. So the politicians didn't make their withdrawal plans based on the best way to do it and the most strategic way to do it. They just wanted out, and the consequences be damned. I don't think I've ever heard our president once. Well, he hasn't expressed regret. He was asked, "Do you regret the way?" Nope, not at all. No regrets. None of these people have any regrets. General Milley, yeah, no regrets. Uh, so you're right; they're never held accountable. And it's when you think back to like World War II, where you could argue that there was an existential threat. Do you believe that there are just wars out there that
Yeah, it's a good question. Is there such thing as a just war? Or, am I just a peace-loving hippie on the left side of that argument? Vladimir Putin should never have invaded Ukraine. There's no doubt about that. And there's no justification in invading another country. But if you look at the conditions that led up to it, we have to accept responsibility for it. He invaded. Yes, he did that. But he never would have done that if you had have set the conditions so he felt comfortable and didn't feel like he was threatened and had to do something like that. So that's the thing that we forget. Yeah, he's a bad dude. He's committed all sorts of crimes and he's doing the wrong thing. He's committing atrocities, but in Russian, they would say that that's actually a job well done and that's a good day by leveling a city with artillery. But none of it would have ever have happened if politicians just spoke to each other. And if you look back through history, and if you look back at when Vladimir Putin came to power in the early 2000s, he tried to engage with the West. And Russia potentially was going to become part of the NATO bloc. And we were in a completely new world order. But unfortunately, the Reserve Bank needs an enemy. They need to be able to print money to maintain power. And what better enemy than the Russians? What better enemy than Saddam Hussein? He's got weapons of mass destruction. Saddam Hussein's like, what are you talking about? We don't have weapons of mass destruction. How many times have I told you? The inspectors have been here. And still to this day, we don't see weapons of mass destruction. Should Saddam have invaded Kuwait in 1990? No. But if the Kuwaitis had spoken to Saddam and negotiated with him in good faith about what had happened during the Iraq-Iran war, Saddam protected the Kuwaitis from the Iranians, the airstrikes, the Navy, and all of the things that had happened for that war that went on for a long time. And he said, you got to pay up. It cost me blood and treasure, and it cost my country a whole lot. You have to pay up. And the Kuwaitis went, we never asked for your protection. And Saddam was like, what are you talking about? You did ask for protection, and I protected you. Don't want to pay up? I'm going to come and seize your oil fields, and I'm going to actually make it happen. And once again, two politicians that don't talk to each other cause this war, and then we go in there, cause this war, and then 10 years later, 12 years later, whatever it is, we go in there and cause even more destruction, and millions of people have died because politicians don't talk to each other, because they lie to each other.
And look, it's sad and it's maddening that when you think that, most people join the military for noble reasons, right? They join it because they feel like, right, they're serving a higher purpose, right? They're serving their country. They're serving, in our case, freedom and our way of life. That's why they join. And you hope that the leaders, that the decision makers above you have the same mindset. Well, sadly, that's not the case. One of the weaknesses in a democracy is that we get what we pay for. So, right? We elected these people. So the populace has to take a lot of the blame. If you're going to continue to elect these people and not hold them accountable for the things that they do, well, what happens? What happens when you reward bad behavior?
They fail upwards. I think let's close out this kind of darker topic that we're talking about here on maybe a solution. And I think the solution is not as difficult as you think. The reason I'm so jaded about politicians, and the reason that I feel so angry and have taken a stand here publicly about that, it's no small thing to come out and say, what a load of shit. It's no small thing to come out and say, I don't believe in this anymore, and politicians are liars. Like, where's the evidence, Rob? Well, there's plenty of evidence. I don't have to justify myself to anybody because these idiots do it all day long. And not a single one of them has ever told the truth about everything. They don't always lie, but the vast majority of them do. But I think the mistake that they make, and any politician that gets into politics is the same as any person that wants to serve in the military. They want to make a difference, and they want to serve, and they want to do the right thing, and they want to make the country a better place because they have a high patriotic ideology that is actually a good thing, to want to help other people. But the politicians make the mistake of only governing for the people that actually elected them. I never voted for Anthony Albanese to be the Prime Minister of Australia, and I certainly didn't vote for Scott Morrison. I voted for different political parties. But when these people come to power, they don't govern on behalf of everybody. They govern on behalf of the small minorities that actually elect them. And if you look at the actual numbers from the Electoral Commission, did they win in a landslide, or was it like really, really close? And always it's really close. It's the same in any country in the world. Elections are always hanging on a knife's edge. And if these people come to power, they come to government on a 51-49 margin, like they just got across the line, then that says to me that you need to listen to both sides of politics and govern for everybody, not just for your side. And that's the mistake that these leftist politicians in Australia have made, is that they have these really strong leftist policies, and the right side of politics is just polarized by that. And the right side is like 49% of people are like, no, we don't want that. Half the country say, no, we don't want that. And that's the mistake politicians are making. If they can find that middle ground between the conservative side and the liberal side, but it never happens. It'll never happen.
Only in the movies are you going to get that kind of
that's a Hollywood fantasy that I've got going on in my head.
No, that's right. And look, in my very strong opinion, and I'm right, by the way, the left side of the aisle, these people are vicious. They'll do anything to win, and when they're in power, they don't waste time. They step on that gas pedal, and they try to accomplish as much of their evil plan as possible. The conservatives tend to be more agreeable type people. They're not the antagonists. The leftists, these people are angry people, and they are not agreeable. And it turns out the non-agreeable people tend to get things done faster than agreeable people. Again, we get what we pay for. Everyone should think hard about what kind of society they want to have before they elect for it. But unfortunately, I think most people do not put that much thought into it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because we don't really live in a democracy. You live in a fantasy, because even if you elect the person that you think would do a better job than the others and they come to power, you really have no say in the way that they behave or the way that they actually govern day to day, because you just don't have any say, because it doesn't matter. You're just one person. You can write to them all day long in emails and on social media and get on the phone and talk to them, but you have no sway whatsoever. All you have is a belief in the system and a belief in the ideology that they want a better opportunity for the country than the other side of politics. So, I think that that's a fundamentally flawed thing. In some ways, it's actually a bit of a waste of time. You spend time thinking about these things. I spent time getting riled up around these idiot politicians, these liars and these cheats and these thieves. And, when they're held to account, they go, I don't recall. Well, I recall what happened like 3 months ago, and suddenly you can't recall. Oh, I've been to a lot of meetings. Yeah, so have I. I've been to heaps of meetings. I've had heaps of people who had hundreds of conversations, but I can recall. A politicians just go, I can't recall. So whenever a politician says, I can't recall, what they're generally saying is, I'm not going to tell you, because if I told you, I'd have to lie to protect myself.
Right.
Because if I told you the truth, I'd be out.
Yep.
That's a lie.
But they're never pushed on it. They settle for it. All right, he doesn't recall. So
because that's the system. The system's set up for that.
No accountability. And the Pentagon is famous for losing money and not knowing where it went. And we're going to get into that, I'm sure, when we get into your Ukrainian corruption segment.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Let me bounce out of this stream, Ed. I'll hand over to you. And
all right. So in this segment, we're going to talk to you about what if China does end up invading Taiwan. Now, I'm not going to get into the military strategy or tactics part of that subject, because Rob would run circles around me. So I don't want to encroach on his expertise. I'm just going to talk to you about the potential economic consequences of that event. What would happen if China did invade Taiwan, and why should you care? Okay, so this is why you should care. So I'm going to start with a couple of clips. They're very short, so bear with me. And it will. Let's see, where did it go here, Rob? All right.
Even though it's tiny, this is actually the 16th largest trading economy in the world. And a research group have estimated that a war here would impact $2 trillion worth of economic activity, and that's before any secondary effects like sanctions. Taiwan manufactures 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductor chips. If there was any disruption to places like this, to factories like this that manufacture the key compounds, it would be economically catastrophic.
If you think about it, chips are in almost everything we use that has an on-off switch. I've seen articles or references where they say that a typical person in the States or Western Europe probably has several hundred encounters a day with devices that have chips. And it's everything we make, and it's industries kind of across the board. So there isn't enough capacity anywhere else in the world to make up if that 65% were somehow shut down or interrupted.
Let's say if Apple decides to find another partner, it will take years for them to get this other chip maker to be ready, if at all. So without TSMC, you will not be able to have chips in your iPhones, and you will not have chips for your F-35 fighter jets that the US flies. So it will be a very different world we are talking about without TSMC in it.
This choke point came to light during the pandemic, when a chip shortage cost the auto industry billions of dollars.
Okay, so during my research, one of the numbers I came across was a very stark one. But all the numbers that came across during my research for this segment, all the numbers are big. They're huge. Well, the most stark number to me is the statistic that the woman referenced there, that it's estimated that about $2 trillion worth of commerce would be lost in the first year. The analysis that I found said that if we lost the flow of semiconductors from Taiwan and China, by the way, because if we put sanctions on Taiwan, or if we put sanctions on China, chips aren't coming out of China either. Anyway, the reduction in GDP in the United States in the first year would be 9%. Now, to put that in perspective, the loss of GDP during the first year of the Great Depression was 7.5%. And that is not even including all of those container ships that will come across the pond to put stuff on the Walmart shelves. Okay, I'm just talking about the semiconductor industry. So if China were to invade Taiwan, well, look, whether there's a shooting war or not, I can pretty much guarantee that we are going to put sanctions on China. Okay, and maybe China doesn't actually invade Taiwan. Maybe they just put a blockade around it. Who knows? But if the net effect is that semiconductor ships are not coming out of Taiwan, we're in a different world. Life is going to change. Rob, let me bring you in here. Let me ask you: Have you upgraded your iPhone yet?
I actually have.
There you go.
Danielle's phone died, and I had to upgrade her phone. And in the process, however the numbers worked, it seemed cheaper for me to have a brand new phone than stay with the old one that I had, because I had a deal. I had a really good deal on. So I ended up, I'm not an iPhone user. I'm a Samsung phone user, or a Google phone, right? So, but the thing is, the chip comes from somewhere. Yeah. What I would encourage listeners and viewers to do is to go away and find a couple of YouTube videos. I might be able to find them for you. I'll link them in the description below. But go away and find out how they make these semiconductors. It is freaking incredible what they do. And what they do in these factories is just like the science and the material engineering that they have. Everything has to happen on site. And that's why these things are so important. You know, if you think of a supply chain, like think of all the equipment that we're using right now. You know, I've got headphones in my ears. You've got headphones on your ears. We've got a screen. We've got a microphone. We've got a webcam. We've got this software and technology. None of the gear that I've got here on my desk all came from the one place. The only thing that came from the one place is the semiconductors in the computers that we're using. Everything else came, there's bits and pieces from everywhere. Somebody 3D printed that. Somebody manufactured that. It was shipped here. It was shipped there. And that's the globalized world that we live in, that interconnected world that we live in. And the reason that that actually works is because the cost of transport is so low, because the cost of shipping around the world is so low. So we can afford to import huge swaths of materials from overseas, from whatever country, and assemble them in one place. We don't have to manufacture anything. If you look at something, in that report, as kind of like a little jab at me, I feel like, she says that F-35 that you're flying, you're not going to fly that any longer.
I purposely left that in for you.
Yeah. So, and I kind of sniggered when I saw that. It's like, yeah, you won't fly it. And that's actually a really good way to shut down the Western Air Forces. No more bits and pieces or parts that you need to actually maintain those things. You better well have your supply chains squared away.
Well, we had a little taste of it, a couple of years ago when the car industry ground to a halt because they couldn't get chips
to a halt, stopped. Yeah,
that's right. Billions of dollars lost. Listen, modern civilization is built on semiconductor chips, right? Listen, when we put sanctions on Russia, there are a few things that we felt. And Russia and Ukraine are the largest providers of fertilizer in the world. So that did affect farmers, and our cost of food has gone up, and is probably going to stay up for a while. Russia is the largest producer of uranium that we need for our nuclear power plants. So we do feel the effects, but the average person is not. That's nothing compared to what they're going to feel if semiconductor chips are cut off from Taiwan. That is going to affect our daily lives in a much more dramatic way.
It definitely is, and we're seeing that play out with the Russians right now. So we know that the Russians they've chewed through their missile supplies, their caliber cruise missile supplies. They've fired the vast majority of what they have, and they have more than enough materials in country to put these things back together. We've also seen them chew through almost their entire armored brigades. There's no more tanks, and they can't rebuild any more tanks because they don't have the bits and pieces that go into the targeting systems, because the French, Thales, was selling them the bits and pieces that go on the Russian tanks targeting systems. The semiconductor chips that go in the front end of those cruise missiles come out of China and out of Taiwan and out of all these different places. And when you look at so the reason I encourage you to go and look at how semiconductors are built is that there's different flavors of them. And the Taiwanese are the absolute pinnacle of semiconductors. I think the Koreans are number 2, and the Chinese are like number 4 or 5. They're down the bottom. The material science that they use is not quite good enough to weaponize or to use in certain things. You might remember at the start of the war in Ukraine, the Russians were pulling chips out of washing machines to put into missiles because that's what they needed, right? They needed to upgrade those things. So when you think of the military, and the Russians haven't got the self-sustaining ability to actually put that together. So what they did is they went away to their ally in Iran and said, hey, can you give us some drones? Yeah, here's some drones. The drones get shot down, and lo and behold, what's inside of those drones? There's US parts, right? That drone is flying along using what? GPS. GPS is owned by the US. And I thought Iran was a sanctioned country. I thought Russia was a sanctioned country. I thought China was sanctioned and they couldn't sell weapon systems and they couldn't do all those things. And the reality is, yes, they are sanctioned, but for every rule that is placed in there, there's like 50 people going, how can we get around this? What can we do? And they just figure out how to actually do it. But then when you look at it in its totality, you think, is that actually being deliberately allowed? Don't worry about it. Let the Iranians have those chips. How many have they got? They got a couple of thousands, a few thousand drones. Yeah, whatever. Who cares? We're never going to go to war with them. And here we are. And we've fed that war machine. We've allowed that to happen. It's just absolute madness. It's maddening. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, look, circling back to the economic consequences of this. Listen, if our GDP ends up taking that kind of a hit, we could very well see ourselves in a Great Depression scenario.
I think in your defense there a little bit, Ed, in America, they're building those semiconductor plants that they have in Taiwan. And they're doing that in Arizona and stuff.
I knew you were going to bring that up because you brought that up before. That's why I added that little end of the clip there where the gentleman was talking about how long it takes for these
years
to come. Yeah, it takes years to come on. So that's one of the reasons why I'm thinking China is doing that mental calculus. Well, if we're going to do the most amount of damage, we got to hustle because they're building chip factories right now. They've broken ground. So we got to if we want maximum effect of this, we've got to do it sooner. between that and the election cycle, I think it'll,
our entire economy and our way of life is going to be destroyed because of the freaking election cycle.
Yeah. But the reason why I wanted to do this segment is to make people aware, that, hey, I'm not predicting it's going to happen. I think it is going to happen. I'll take that back. I am going to predict that it is going to happen in some form. But when the day that you wake up and you hear the news, all hell is going to break loose, economically speaking. So you need to be aware that this could happen, and that the economic effects are going to be very dramatic, and it will affect your life. So reduce your exposure to your bank, put some of the money into gold and silver, and establish streams of passive recurring income. Get your financial house in order, because if you wait for that big news event to come across the screen before you do anything, it's too late. So you got to get on it now. That's why I wanted to bring this up, and I'll end on this little segment. So I saw this news. This news came out today. The planned arms industry trip to Taiwan comes as the U.S. is looking to wrap up arms sales and general military cooperation with Taiwan, which will further exacerbate tensions with Taiwan. So what happened? So there is apparently a group of contractors heading to Taiwan. Raytheon, General Dynamics. Hey, what can we do to help? Of course, no strings attached, right? No, we'll just give you everything for free. No, there's a lot of money to be made on this upcoming war. And so all these contractors are on this little junket to Taiwan to say, hey, what do you need? You want a cruise missile? You want to... So I just wanted to point out that there's money to be made in these wars. Anyway, that's the end of my segment.
There is money to be made for sure. But, there must be a way to figure this out. There must be a way. How do you take the heat out of the conversation? How do you stop this from happening? And how do you stop a communist totalitarian regime doing what it is that they're going to do? There has to be a way. There's way smarter people on planet Earth than me and you just on a call here pontificating what's actually going on, trying to solve the world's problems.
Well, see, that assumes that you have people who don't have an agenda, who want to do what's best for America. These people in charge, they have agendas. The Pentagon, they've got their agendas. The deep state, they have their agendas. The Biden family trust, they have their agenda.
They do. Speaking of the Biden family trust, let's throw to a little screen share. I'm going to shift gears here, and I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to tie back to you why everything that the government tells you is a lie. And you've heard that Ukraine is the most corrupt government on planet Earth, but you've never really heard the figures. So I want you to listen very closely to this guy when he explains exactly what the Ukrainians are doing and exactly how much money is going out in this corruption. It's just absolutely shocking. And the title of the video is Shocking Moments. And the Ukrainians are there to defend themselves. So I just want to play this. This is just from literally a couple of days ago, from 4 days ago. And so the prosecutor general, the Ukrainian prosecutor general, that is, asked point blank about Hunter Biden and Burisma. So let's throw to the video and check this out. Let me just fix the speed because she's on 2 speed. I'll just dial it back a bit for the people listening on a podcast. And here we go.
We now proceed to Constance Scott Perry of Pennsylvania. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Prosecutor General, for being here. It's going to be hard for any of us to hold the sovereign nation of Russia or its leader accountable. We need to try and do that. In the meantime, what we can do is make sure that we are on our best behavior. And as you probably know, in America, yesterday was tax day. Americans are forced to send in their hard-earned dollars, oftentimes for things they don't agree with. It's in total about $30 billion in humanitarian aid that we have sent to Ukraine. And I just want to run through a series of dates and reports for you. In 2011, a report by The Atlantic said that citizens of Ukraine thought that bribes were customary and expected. In 2011, the president of Ukraine stated that bribes and corruption cost the country about $2.5 billion, or 10 to 15% of the country's budget. In 2016, a report indicated that between 38 and 42% reported paying a bribe to access basic public services. In 2022, the former head of the Asset Recovery and Management Agency was charged with embezzling $10.6 million in funds. And in 2022, the National Corruption Bureau of Ukraine observed and noted corruption remained common at all levels in the executive, legislative, and judicial branches. Sir, we want to make sure that all our money is safeguarded and that we're not involved not only in losing that money that the American taxpayer works hard for, but in the corruption itself. And I want to bring another series of events to you. The UK Serious Fraud Office froze $23 million of a guy named Zolchevsky's assets. He was in charge of Burisma. On April 13th of 2014, there was Hunter Biden said the contract should start now, not after the upcoming visit of my guy, his guy being the Vice President of the United States. On April 22nd of the same year, Hunter and Archer said that Ukraine must understand the value of Burisma. And on May 12th of 2014, Hunter Biden said started working for the Burisma board at $83,000 in change per month. On May 12th, Zolchevsky's envoy said, use your influence to combat the Ukrainian government's allegations against Burisma. George Kent from our embassy told the DOJ that Burisma paid $7 million in bribes to prosecutors to kill the investigation into bribes for gas and oil permit license. February 10th, 2015, Urema replaced by Victor Shokin. And then a Soros-funded activist group called the Anti-Corruption Action Center, which is ironic, said that Shokin was not pursuing Zolchevsky, which of course was absolutely not the case, because on February 2nd of the same year, Victor Shokin issued arrest warrants for Zolchevsky and wanted to seize his assets. And then on February 12th of 2016, President Biden called then President Poroshenko. And then on February 17/18 of 2016, literally 10 days later or thereabouts, Victor Shokin, the prosecutor general, was fired. May 13th of 2016, Joe Biden, the president, now vice president then, tells President Poroshenko that $1 billion in loan guarantees would be forthcoming. And then in the intervening time, then Vice President Biden went before the Council on Foreign Relations and announced that I told him they had to fire the prosecutor general, or they want to get the loan guarantees. And what do you know? Son of a bitch, the prosecutor was fired. And then in April of 2020, Victor Shokin was formally recorded as the victim of an alleged crime by former Vice President Joe Biden. So, sir,
I want to stop the stream there because it just really, when I was just like gobsmacked, I watched that video like 2 or 3 times when I first heard it. So I'm watching everything at 2 speed, right? I'm trying to catch up to the time when I dialed it back and I dialed it back again. And I'm like, when they lay it out in a timeline like that, because he's reading off a document of dot points, right? And on this date and this time, this is what happened. But when you listen to what he's saying, like corruption is systemic throughout Ukraine. And what I haven't played in that video, and I'll link the video down below so you can watch that in your own time, but the Ukrainian prosecutor general there is trying to defend himself, saying, we got rid of all those people. We defended that. That's not happening. And then the poor old American guy is like, well, what guarantees can you give me that it won't happen again? It's like, well, we got rid of everybody. But sorry. Not even saying sorry, not even held to account, nothing that they can do to actually make this happen. And what I wanted to do is just to highlight the hypocrisy of our society is that we literally send billions and billions of dollars of military aid to a place like Ukraine. But on top of all of that support, their infrastructure is being completely destroyed. And now countries around the world, virtually all of them, there's 100 and something countries around the world, are pledging to commit literally hundreds of billions of dollars to rebuild the place. And now we're funding their government because the war has completely depleted their treasury. And that's actually what happens in a war. Fair enough, they need help. They've completely depleted their treasury. So there's no money to pay for social services or social security. So now the American government is propping up the Ukrainian social security and their pension funds. Meanwhile, back home in America, your banks are failing. This crime is out of control in America, and you have these incredible social problems there. And everybody just goes, well, you know, the budget is like this many $1 trillion and it's a small investment there. And if we don't spend the money there, then Putin's going to be in Poland before you know it. And then we're going to be at war with them. We better stop it in Ukraine before it actually happens. And when you stand back and look at it, what I think is, I think this whole thing is a ruse. It's been going on since 2014 when the Russians took back Crimea. And then now they're arming them. And what they're doing is systematically trying to destroy Ukraine completely and then build a buffer zone between Ukraine and Russia. And then all of these banksters are going to go in there, spend gazillions of dollars and make gazillions of dollars. To your point, Ed, you're saying, you know, all these weapon companies in Taiwan go, what do you need? A cruise missile? Do you need what? A T-LAM? Do you need a harpoon? What do you need? I got it. That's what's happening. And you look at it and you go, what is this all for money? This is not a fight about land. these American politicians don't care about land. They care about the destruction of the Russian economy and so-called de-Baathification of Russia. That's what they called it in Iraq. There's only one party in Iraq, the Baath Party, and Paul Bremer went in there and went, no, we're not finished here. We're going to have to de-Baathification of Iraq. Otherwise, they'll come back and it'll be bigger and worse than what it was. And that was the most categorical mistake in modern history. That idiot Paul Bremer was never held to account. He was never dragged in front of a committee and said, why did you do that? Why did you say that? Why did you let that happen? He just, oh, sorry, man. Sorry about that. But in the process, he got paid millions and millions of dollars and probably siphoned off and skimmed off millions of dollars in that process. I don't know. I don't have evidence of that, but somebody in a position like that is probably doing it. And now the same playbook is going on right here in Ukraine, and they're trying to do it with Russia. It's just not going to work. It's an absolute travesty, and it's an absolute disaster. And it's like the countries of the world and the corrupt politicians of the world are positioning themselves to come in and swoop over the top and take what they need to take from Ukraine once all this is said and done. But it's at the cost of Ukrainian lives. And I said earlier in my opening remarks that politicians don't care about you or me, and they don't care about freedom either. That's all bullshit. It's complete bullshit. The only people that really care about you and me and freedom are the people that serve in the military, because they're the ones putting their life on the line, and they have to care. And I know that because I've been there on the sharp end of that pointy, very, very pointy spear. When you put your life on the line and it's your life or that other person's life, you suddenly care, and you're deeply patriotic, and you care about the people to your left and your right. But those politicians are sitting in an office like never in that position. They don't have adrenaline coursing through their veins. They're not looking down the barrel of a rifle at somebody else. That's just unbelievable. They don't care about you or me. All they care about is holding on to power and making as much money as possible so they can stay in power as long as possible. And that video just highlights it in absolute clarity.
You know, about a year ago, I did a video for my channel titled World War III Must Happen. And my point in that video was that there are some things that the elites in this world want to accomplish. And if you've been paying attention, the elites are the people who are most prolific. They're the most adamant about these wars. They love this Ukrainian war. They love all this. You watch the media, the general media. They support everything that our administration is doing. They love this war. Well, Charles Schwab, head of WEF, many times he said, yeah, we got everything in place. We just need some big event. He literally, I'm not paraphrasing that much. Said, we need some big event to get everyone to go along with it. They need two things to happen. They need a shiny object, so people are not paying attention to what they're really doing, implementing the CBDCs, implementing their 15-minute cities, their climate change agenda. So they want to implement those things, but they want to create this feeling of, well, we're all in this together. When World War II rolled around, people sacrificed because they believed in the effort, they believed in the mission, right? So people sacrificed across the board. Everybody sacrificed because it's for the greater good. And they're going to need that kind of sentiment in order to convince people to give up their last bits of freedom. Yeah, I don't want a digital ID. Yeah, but you have to because it's for the greater good. Okay, all right. So this whole thing about the greater good. So that's why I predicted maybe I'd been a little, I don't know, but my thinking was, well, this is why World War III has to happen, because they need that last little push to convince people, the holdouts, to adopt their agendas. So,
once again, when you say that, the people that stand to benefit the most are the political elite, but the people that suffer the most are just normal, everyday people like you and me. Because if World War III does happen, people like you and me, even though we're beyond the age of holding a rifle and standing on the front line, well, I could probably still do it, but they probably won't take me because I'm too old for it. But the point is, we're the ones that actually have to go and do what they're telling us to do. Meanwhile, they're sitting in their plush offices eating delicious food and drinking clean water while somebody's on the front line, in the blood and the dirt. And that's what I'm saying when I talk about my Telegram channel all the time. I wish I could show people what was actually going on, because if I showed you, it would just shock you and it would wake you up and you would see what's going on. Modern day trench warfare where people are assaulting trenches and killing each other at close quarters, all captured on a Chinese drone in ultra high resolution in 4K for everybody to see. You've never seen one of those videos, have you? But I've got dozens of those videos saved on my hard drive to show you what modern day trench warfare looks like. Because one day I'll be able to wake up people and say, look, this is what we're supporting. Is this what you want more of? You're cheering this on. You want more of this, do you? And it's the brave people on the front lines that are having to go and commit those acts and do those things are the ones that are suffering, that are dying and doing the killing on the front end. And these politicians are just full of shit and they're lying about every single thing that's going on. It is an absolute travesty. And I'm so glad that you kind of raised this issue of interconnectivity today when you're talking about chips, because all of this thing is connected together, right?
Yeah.
And that interconnectivity is something politicians don't want to lose. That globalization and the decoupling of globalization like that is a really big problem. But one really interesting thing that's happening, and you mentioned it a lot more than me, and I need to do some more reading and research on it, is the BRICS side of things. Because the BRICS side of things don't care about the American hegemony and the American dollar, because they're just going to figure out another way to do it, because they don't want to lose that opportunity for globalization, because they don't want their supply chains destroyed in the process. Because if they do, guess what they'll lose? They lose their political power. So they're doing everything they can to hold it together. But meanwhile, here in the West, we seem to be systematically destroying those things, which is
yeah.
Really
look, de-dollarization. Look, we are in many cases our own worst enemy. The things the policies we are adopting, like the never-ending printing press, there are consequences to nonstop printing, and we're going to feel it. The value. Remember, everyone. Fiat currencies are garbage. They're worthless. They are literally just pieces of paper. They're not backed by anything.
Hey, they're backed by a promise.
Well, that's right. They're backed by the promise that it will be able to buy stuff. Well, listen, they've even broken that promise. In the last 100 years, the U.S. dollar has lost 97% of its buying power.
So there you go, right there. Once again, you've proved my case. I rest my case. Politicians lie, because that dollar, that fiat currency, is backed by the promise by the government and the Reserve Bank of whatever country you're in to say that it will get you that. But the promise is that it will hold its value and it'll be able to do that. But because they're so hopeless at managing an economy, the promise has been broken again and again, time and again.
Well, that's they call that the fancy term for that is modern monetary theory, right? Which basically means what's the big deal? We'll just print more money.
Maybe it actually should be pulled from science and called chaos theory.
Yeah. That's why I joked with you the other day. Why should we even bother paying taxes? What's the point? They'll just, if they need more money, just print it. You know,
just print it. Anyway. What do you need money from me for?
Yeah, just print it. Leave me alone. Go print it.
Hyperfinance. I'm reading a book at the moment. I can't remember exactly, by Jim Rickards. Jim Rickards.
Jim Rickards.
Yeah. He was a banker. Yeah, the book is it's really quite interesting. He talks about how economic war can actually happen. He talks about the Chinese unrestricted warfare. It's called The Death of Money. So I think the book's a couple of years old now, but it just shows you how the fiat system will end. And he talks about how economic war can happen via hedge funds and whatnot. I'm just in the first couple of chapters, but so far so good. So I'll share some more with you when I know more about that, which gives me the opportunity to shift gears and get out of the stream and let you take the last segment of the show. What are you talking about here, Git?
What am I talking about? Oh, bank failures. Boy, another joyful topic. Boy, we're just throwing sunshine around all over the place here today. So
if it bleeds, it leads, baby. That's what the news is. All right, over to you, Ed. Go for it.
Okay, so a few weeks ago, for those of you who have short memories, we had kind of a scare in the financial industry. We had some banks go under. And now I predicted this event again, that it would happen. And it all started out in California with SVB Bank, Silicon Valley Bank, right? And then it's followed the following Monday with a bank called Signature Bank. And it was a scary time. And a lot of people now are breathing a sigh of relief. Oh, thank God, it's over. We got through that hurdle. No, we have not. There are going to be more. I'll make another prediction. There's going to be another wave of bank failures, and it's going to be much larger than what happened at SVB Bank. Now, it's important for you to know that we have an outfit here that's supposed to provide insurance in the event of bank failures, but they are woefully underfunded, and they only had about $128 billion of assets on their books, and they spent about 30% of that just bailing out that one bank, SVB Bank, and so their funds have been depleted even more. Anyway, so let me throw to a clip, then we'll come back and we'll finish up my thought. Oh, the wrong one, sorry.
Will the deposits in every community bank in Oklahoma, regardless of their size, be fully insured now? Are they fully recovered? Every bank, every community bank in Oklahoma, regardless of the size of the deposit, will they get the same treatment that SVB just got or Signature Bank just got?
A bank only gets that treatment if a majority of the FDIC board, a supermajority of the Fed board, and I, in consultation with the president, determine that the failure to protect uninsured depositors would create systemic risk and
Okay, so did you hear that? She said she will decide. She and a small group of people will decide whether or not a bank gets bailed out. So that's very important for you to know.
Will the deposits in every community bank in Oklahoma, regardless of their size, be fully insured now? Are they fully recovered? Every bank, every community bank in Oklahoma, regardless of the size of the deposit, will they get the same treatment that SVB just got or Signature Bank just got?
A bank only gets that treatment if a majority of the FDIC board, a supermajority of the Fed board, and I, in consultation with the president, determine that the failure to protect uninsured depositors would create systemic risk and significant economic and financial consequences.
So what is
And
your
we
plan?
made that determination.
Right. So what
these
is
two
your
banks.
plan to keep large depositors from moving their funds out of community banks into the big banks? We have seen the mergers of banks over the past decade. I'm concerned you're about to accelerate that by encouraging anyone who has a large deposit in a community bank to say, we're not going to make you whole, but if you go to one of our preferred banks, we will make you whole at that point.
Look, I mean, that's certainly not something.
Okay, she knew she couldn't answer that question. She knew that he had her. She couldn't answer that question honestly. Okay, so let me kind of tell you what's going on here. So the FDIC insurance is supposed to be capped at $250,000 per account, but a lot of accounts at that particular bank had accounts far greater than $250,000. But because a lot of these people were, Democratic, supporters, this is Silicon Valley, okay, a very liberal bank. There's a lot of hedge fund money in there, a lot of venture capital money in there, and a lot of Chinese companies had their money in there. So what the FDIC decided to do is, well, you know what? I know you're only limited to 250,000, and you have 10 million in your account. That's right, we got you covered. And that's what they did. The decision to do that. That created a moral hazard. So what this congressman was saying, hey, wait a minute. Are you going to give the same privileges to the bank in my district if it goes under? And she's like, well, maybe not. We'll have to see whether they have a systemic risk. So this creates a moral hazard. So now, this is a really big earthquaking event in the financial industry, because in effect, what the government just did is they just guaranteed all bank accounts in America, okay, which is around $9 trillion. They just basically guaranteed, all right, everyone's covered. FDIC insurance, don't worry about it. We got everyone covered.
That's how they bring confidence back into the market. That's what that is.
Yeah, and so where does all this money come from? Well, it's gonna come from you. They're gonna assess your bank account.
Me individually, you mean? You're pointing.
That's
you're
right.
at me.
Just you. I sent in your name last week. They got you on record, so you're okay. And now this is a scary thing. This is why I think this is the real landmine that is pending, and that's the derivatives market. Okay, I'm not going to explain to you right now what derivatives are. For now, let's just suffice to remind you that the SDS market, the derivatives market, were largely blamed for the 2008 to 2010 financial crisis. Well, JP Morgan all by itself has $55 trillion of exposure to those same derivatives. And in the top 5 banks alone, $187 trillion. And again, to put that in perspective, the entire GDP of America works out to about 22 trillion. So JP Morgan all by itself has twice the amount of GDP in exposure to the derivatives debt. Now, these derivatives are very highly leveraged, sometimes 10, 20 to 1. So it won't take, so one bad day in the derivatives market, let's say they go down, I don't know, 10%. Well, if you have $55 trillion worth of exposure, you're going to, JP Morgan could lose $5 trillion in one day. So, these people have not learned their lessons. And this is a worldwide problem. Now, when the next wave of bank failures happen, that's what I call it a wave. It's not going to be 1 or 2 banks. All right. It's going to be, because they're all interconnected. All these guys, they have each other's debt on their books. So as soon as you see the next brand name bank go under, you're going to see a domino effect. And the way it's going to happen, it's probably going to be announced on a Friday night after the market's closed. And when it's announced, you're going to have hours, if you're lucky, to get your money out of your bank. Even right now, without the scare, it's hard to get your money out of your bank, right? You go to your bank right now, and you have to fill out a questionnaire and be interviewed and get permission from the president of the United States to get your money out of your bank. It's hard enough as it is. So you cannot wait. Reduce your exposure to your bank, put some of the money into gold and silver, and establish streams of passive recurring income. Because when this next bomb blows up, you're not going to have time to do any of this stuff. It's going to be too late. Anyway, that's a little ray of sunshine for today. Rob, what do you think?
I think that Janet Yellen explained the process of getting your money out of the bank. If you want to get $50,000 out of the bank, the Federal Reserve Board has to meet. They have to have a supermajority, and then if she agrees, she has to take it to the president. You think it's funny? Try and go and get 50 grand out of the bank right now. I promise you, that's what they'll do. They'll have to meet. They'll have to make an assessment. We don't have the money here, and they'll treat you like a moron.
And they will ask you, "What are you doing with this?"
None of your business. You didn't ask me where I got it from, where I put it in.
They will ask you. So what are you doing with the money? They will ask you. It's unbelievable. I know you got all your money out of your bank, right, Rob? You got gold doubloons under your mattress, scattered around the house.
That's it, man. It's like tucked away in the cupboards in the back there in the safe next to the extra spear guns. Yeah, it's certainly a crazy time that we live in. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about that, if maybe in a rapid fire sense. Yeah. Do you know what a supermajority is?
Yeah, I do. It's somewhere between 51% and 99%. It's somewhere in there.
Seriously, she's throwing out this bankster corporate doublespeak as if that Congress guy knows exactly what and she says, like, she's very definitive. Only if we have a supermajority, whatever the hell that means.
It's whatever she says it is.
And if I agree, yeah, and only then, if we have a supermajority and I agree, I'll take it to the president. Maybe.
Yeah.
I'll think about taking it to the president. So it just goes to show that these people, once again, don't care about you or me. All they care about is maintaining absolute power. And even that congressman gives you that appearance that he cares. And on the outside, he does care. But the reason he cares is because of his own political skin. Because in the event that the community banks in Ohio go down and they're his constituents that are on the receiving end of that, guess what's going to happen to him? No more political office, out you go. So the only reason that he cares is to save his own skin. I can pretty much guarantee you that if his political life was not on the line, he wouldn't give a shit. Janet Yellen doesn't give a stuff because her political life is not on the line because she's a protected species in the United States. And we have that same thing here in Australia. We had an inquiry that was put out and a series of recommendations made by the government about the Reserve Bank of Australia. And what they did is they threw the Reserve Bank governor under the bus. And rightly so. The guy is an absolute moron. We have ridiculous inflation here in Australia. And the only reason we have inflation here in Australia is because they print more money. It's got nothing to do with a war in the Ukraine or anything. It's got nothing to do with any outside influence. If there's more money in society, more cash in society, things are worth less and you have to pay more for them. So that's what inflation is. It's the hidden tax. And they say that those people are responsible for it, and they are. The government is actually correct on that term. They're responsible for it. And they created a whole series of recommendations to put out, and they accepted all of these recommendations. Here in Australia, the Labor Party seem to be really good at actually coming up with these strategic ideas and these documents and putting out all these things. So let's see if they actually implement some of these things to make our lives a little bit better.
Well, the takeaway that our audience should take from this topic is that the modern financial system is a Ponzi scheme. Right? It's a Ponzi scheme, and you are at its mercy. And if you are working hard, if you're exchanging your time for money, it's not really money. Remember, it's currency. Let's just use that term. If you're exchanging your valuable time, time out of your life for money, and that money is going down in value every day, that's something you should care about. And that's something you have to start doing things to protect. Listen, there are stats out there that 50% of Americans do not have $400 set aside in case of an emergency. The vast majority of people are living paycheck to paycheck. 70% of people in the latest CNBC poll said that they were financially stressed, that they're living paycheck to paycheck. These buy now, pay later schemes are all over the place right now. There are these apps, apparently. These buy now, pay later apps. And people are
using... It's a big thing here in Australia too. Yeah.
Okay. People are using those apps to buy groceries. So people, credit card debt last year hit an all-time high. People are taking on debt. And at a time when interest rates are going up sharply. We have not seen, my guess pretty soon, they can't keep this stuff quiet forever. The media, mainstream media cannot keep it suppressed forever. At some point, there's going to be a tipping point where one of these mainstream media says, you know what, let's do a story on it. Then they're all going to do stories on it.
Yeah.
And the stories are going to be ugly. And the people right now, they're behind on their mortgages. Mortgage delinquencies are accelerating, and it's going to get worse. So, but this news tends to take a while for it to hit a saturation point where it kind of hits the zeitgeist out there. But people, talking amongst themselves. Oh yeah, man, things. I can't go to the bar tonight. But I don't have $10 to spend on beer. I got a second job. I've got another job I have to go to. Things are tough out there. So people need. But you know what? In every catastrophe, there's always opportunity. And that's what we want people to do. We want people not to be victims in all of this, but to be opportunists.
And I would close out today's show by saying that I think it's really important that you pay attention to these things, but don't let these things rule your life. Don't let all of this negativity that we're talking about become something that's embedded in your day-to-day activity. What you need to do is to give it a cursory glance a couple of times a day and go, oh yeah, that's important. I know I need to address that. I'm insured against that. I'm protected against that. And I'm doing everything that I should be doing to make sure that this doesn't bite me on the ass in the event the worst case actually comes to pass. Be careful of being drawn into the negativity like Ed and I are always drawn into this stuff, because we like this. We like this geopolitical stuff and we love having these conversations. But for most people, it's actually really, really negative, and it can actually pull your energy down. So make sure you take the time to get outside, to go and do some exercise, to tell the people that you love them. Say it more often than you realize. You don't say it enough. You got to say it more often than you realize. So say that, because they're the things that matter, not these idiot lying politicians, not these banksters that will do anything to take our way of life away. Make sure you take the time to spend that with your loved ones. Ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up another show for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to follow us over on Spotify, on Twitter, on Telegram, and on Rumble. And we'd love to hear your feedback. If you haven't subscribed to the show, make sure you just scroll down a little bit in the show notes there, hit the subscribe button, and give that bell a bit of a bang there as well. And if you're listening to this as a podcast, don't forget to subscribe on the podcast as well. That wraps it up for today's show. Ed, stick with me as I close out the stream here. Don't leave. I want to talk to you before this all goes, and we'll see you tomorrow, folks. Bye for now.